Welcome back, everyone. For today's video, we are back and we have an exciting recap from a game that was played today, November 27th of the great year 2025, between the five-time world champion Magnus Carlsen and myself. Now, very recently, chess.com introduced this new event. It is a 3-0 tournament. This means the time control is 3 minutes, no added time, with 11 rounds. There are 3 events held every Thursday, one I believe at 11 o'clock Eastern, one at 3 p.m, and I think one final one at I believe 8 p.m. if I'm not mistaken. But with 3 events, it's really exciting because 3-0 is the premier time control for playing Blitz, and many players like to play in this event, even though the prize money isn't necessarily that high. Now, the game that we're going to be picking up with is my game against Magnus. This game was played in the 8th round, I believe, of this event. Going into this game, I had a score of 6.5 points out of 7, having given up 1 draw earlier in the event. Magnus was hot on my heels with 6 points out of 7, having given up 2 draws. So a big battle in the quest to win this event, and Magnus has the white pieces. So without further ado, let's jump right into the game. Magnus opens with the move d4. I play knight f6. We get c4, e6, and now we get the move knight c3. Here I play the move bishop b4, and now Magnus plays the move f3. Now, what's very interesting about Magnus choosing to play this line is I suspect, I cannot confirm this for a fact, that Magnus actually is paying a lot of attention to random blitz games that are being played online. You're probably thinking, what am I talking about? Now, for those of you guys who do not live on chess.com every day of the week, usually I like to play a little bit of casual blitz on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Very specifically, yesterday I played a 28 game match, 28 or 29 game match against this Ukrainian player, Artem Diachuk, I think it was. And in most of the games against him, we had a very similar variation. He played many games with a3 and then f3 and e4 here. He also played e3 and then a3. He also played the move f3. And I found it very shocking. This is speculation because I don't know this for a fact, but I think Magnus literally was living on chess.com, lurking and watching me play blitz for 3 hours yesterday. Now, maybe that's what it takes to become the best, but frankly, considering all things going on, I am a little bit shocked that Magnus had the time to do such op-ed research. Anyway, back to the game. Magnus plays f3. I go c5, we get a3, I trade, and now I play the move queen a5. Now, of course, I have actually had this position against Magnus Carlsen himself from the opposite side. When we played in Norway chess, I believe in 2024, I played this exact variation. Now, here the correct move for black to play is the move d5 here, trying to attack the center right away, because when I play this move queen a5, Magnus goes bishop d2, I play d6, and after the move e4, we have the big white center. White has all these pawns here in the center. White also has the 2 b's here as well, so when you combine a big white center with 2 bishops, it's very hard to play. On the flip side, this is a game of 3-minute chess with no added time whatsoever, and because of that, I try to move quickly. So I castle. Magnus moves the bishop. I go knight back. And here Magnus plays the move f4. Now, this is an excellent decision by Magnus because he understands what my plan here. The plan is here. The one big weakness that white has in this position is you have these double pawns that are potentially very weak here. If white were to play a move like, let's just say knight e2 and castle, after queen to a4, let's say white goes like queen e1, I can simply take the pawn. I can also go knight c6 followed by knight a5 taking the pawn. And let's just ignore the evaluation bar for a second. The point is this weakness is very easily targetable. So Magnus understands what I'm trying to do, and he correctly plays move f4. And this is a great decision because when Magnus plays f4 here, there are 2 things going on. First of all, he opens up the 3 things. He opens up the diagonal for the queen. Additionally, he frees the square for the knight to develop so they can jump towards the king side here. And the third most important point behind this move is that Magnus now can play for this move e5 here, opening up this diagonal for this bishop. When you combine that with the queen, the knight, all these pieces coming towards the king side, white is not concerned about this measly pawn on c4 here because all the pieces are going towards the king side to checkmate the black king. So f4 is an excellent decision from Magnus. Already here, I was starting to feel very uneasy about my position, but I figured it's 3-0. You just got to move fast. So I play knight b6. Magnus decides to play knight f3 here first. e5 would have been good as well, but he goes knight f3, developing the knight. Now I play the move queen to a4. Magnus, of course, plays queen e2. He never wants to trade the queens because if we reach an endgame here in the long run, let's just say knight c6, something like this, for example, this pawn on c4 is always going to be a huge weakness, and white has this issue to deal with. So Magnus, of course, says niet. He does not trade the queens. He also guards the pawn on c4 from being captured with the queen and the bishop. And now I play the move knight c6. Now this move is simply based on an oversight by me. Had I been in this position again, probably I would simply play f5 right away. The idea behind f5 here is that if white goes e5, this bishop is on a clogged diagonal where it has no scope. But I play the move knight c6 instead. Magnus, of course, plays e5, opening up the diagonal, and as soon as he played e5, I realized I had reached an uh-oh spaghetti-o moment, because I thought I was just going to play f5, similar to the previous version. But if I play f5 here, I simply forgot that white could take the pawn on d6, and now the pawn on c5 is hanging here, and white is simply completely winning. So as soon as he goes e5, I'm like, oh man, what's going on? I also realize internally this is a 3-minute game. There's no added time. So I simply play the move knight to a5. Now here, Magnus correctly sacks the bishop, and this is what is known as the classic Greek gift. For all of you guys out there who have studied ancient history, we all study ancient Greek history, of course, in our spare time. This is what is known as the Greek gift. Now, this Greek gift sacrifice is where you give up a bishop, and generally the way it works is you bring a knight and a queen and you checkmate the king on the edge. Now, of course, we ignore the evaluation bar for a second because this idea is one of the most common themes that you'll see at the beginner level. Usually it occurs out of different openings. Very specifically, something like a French defense is very common that you get something like this down the road where white castles. Actually, maybe I put the pieces on the wrong squares, but eventually you got some position like this. I'm just going to set it up. Maybe French defense is the wrong example here, but just so you guys have some idea, and I'm doing this on the fly, you got something like this: knight g5, king g8, queen to h5, and the knight and the queen checkmate the black king. Now again, the line I gave isn't actually correct, of course, but this sacrifice is very, very common in the game of chess. All right, so back to the game. For anybody who's also wondering about why they call it the Greek gift, it's because back in the ancient days, everybody is aware of the story of the Trojan horse. The Trojan horse, of course, was this gift that was given where you got this free horse. It was this wooden horse. It's symbolic. Of course, as we know from history, inside the hidden wooden horse, there were a bunch of people, and then the people came out in the middle of the night, and the rest is history. So it's basically this fake gift that's not a real gift because you're going to end up checkmating. So we reach this position where I play knight a5. Now Magnus sacks the bishop, goes check, and I actually thought after king g8 that Magnus would play queen h5, and I saw the very nasty move queen to c2, covering the checkmating square. And as you can tell, black is up a piece here, and black actually will be able to snuff out any attack very quickly. And with only the queen and the knight and no way to checkmate here, black will win the game. But of course, Magnus sees the move queen to d3 instead. This threatens a checkmate on h7 with the queen and the knight. I can't go queen c2 because this would be a Botez gambit. White takes the queen and wins the game. So after the move queen to d3 here, what I realize is that if I play g6 to stop the checkmate on h7, now white can swing the queen over to h3 and the pawn is in the way. If I go queen c2, the pawn is here. This is just checkmate. Queen can't capture. So it's a very sneaky idea to play queen d3, setting up the checkmate, because I can't go g6 after queen h3, rook d8, rook e8, there'd be check, queen f7, gg, why not? Therefore, I have to move my rook here to the d8 square, trying to run with my king to the center and escape the checkmating threats. Magnus flicks in the check, I run the king over, and now he castles his king. Here I play the move knight bc4, and as soon as I play this move, I realized that this decision was very bad. Now here we have D's knights. But the important thing, similar to when you have two rooks or two knights or two bishops, a little bit less so, but you want to think about where your knights are going. Now, a good example when I talk about rooks, just to show you guys something, is let's just say you got some random position here, something like this. This is just a very basic example here, is which rook do you want to put on the center file. Now, in this position, normally you want to put the A rook here because the rook on e8 will support something happening in the center. So say we just put a queen back and you go f6. If knight takes, you take with the rook, and the two rooks are perfectly placed. Now, it's a very random example of the rooks, but I'm just trying to give you guys something so you understand what I'm referring to. When you have two knights or two rooks, normally when you have an option to put a rook on an open file, you figure where is the other rook better. In this case, we look at the knights. Which knight should I capture this pawn with? Now, I ended up playing knight b takes c4, and this is a very big mistake, and I should have taken the a knight. Of course, disregard the valuation, but the reason I should take with this knight is that this knight on b6 here can come back to the center of the board. It can get very, very close to this king that's very loose here. Whereas when I capture with this knight, in the position. This knight here, if it goes to c6, it's still very far away from my king. If it goes to b3, obviously just to set up a position like this knight is over here. My king is busy getting attacked here on the king side. These knights do nothing. So I end up taking with a b knight like an idiot. Maybe it's the Magnus effect. We get check. Magnus takes a pawn, and now I swing my queen back to try and stop the checkmate on f7. Now, if I had captured with the other knight here, just to show you guys why it makes such a difference, in this position here, let's say white goes check and I run over and you get knight f7. Now I can bring the knight to the center, harassing the queen right away. And with these knights hitting all the central squares, black is fine. But when we get this position here, after queen to e8, white could play a move like queen f6. And after king d7 and knight f7, now this knight, no knight can get to this d5 square to hit the queen because I have my knights on the wrong squares. Magnus plays the move f5 here, which is also a good move. I play queen g8, we get f6, and this is a move that while it's winning, I actually started to become more optimistic about my position, because even though white is technically winning in this position, we've reached an endgame where I have an extra piece. We're playing a 3-0 game, no added time. If I can just come up with a couple of tricks here, maybe I can keep the game close on both clock and the board. So I play the move b6 here, obvious move because I've got to activate my bishop here. This bishop and rook are completely out of the game. They're not in the action. So when I go b6, I can go to either b7 or a6 and bring this rook over into the game. So Magnus plays the move rook ae1. Now I trade on d4, and here I play the move bishop b7. Now what's funny here is that I actually was very close to playing bishop a6 before going bishop b7. Initially I thought, why not go to a6, create some threats to fossilize this rook, like knight takes, you lose the rook and you lose the game. But ultimately I decided to go to b7 because I thought, you know what, the bishop needs to be on this diagonal. Maybe it needs to come to d5 to support this pawn, like after takes. I'm worried about this pawn. Why not put the bishop on d5? Now what's funny is when Magnus takes a pawn here, white is actually not as winning as he was before, because the computer shows there's a brilliant sacrifice. You can sack the rook with rook takes pawn, and after takes, rook to g8. Suddenly the rook and the bishop are perfectly combined to target this pawn in front of the white king. Say white moves the bishop, after rook g2, king h1, you go rook to g3, checking the king. After block, takes, you take the rook, checkmate, king is done. So I could have played rook g7, but already here, because we're playing a 3-0 game with no added time, I'm in this mode of trying to blitz out moves. So I go for the move bishop d5, supporting the pawn on e6, creating the classic wooden shield as well. And now Magnus plays the move rook c1. Now this move is a mistake here. Magnus should have played the move knight to e5 check, and after king takes pawn here, there's apparently the move knight to g4 with knight f6. I was also frankly very worried about rook to f7, trying to set up a checkmate on d7. Ultimately Magnus goes rook c1. Here I play the move b5, and this is where I miss a golden opportunity to come back into the game. If I play the move knight to c6 here, these knights cover this e5 square. If white goes check, I can simply take, and now black should be completely fine. So I should have played knight c6, but ultimately I go b5 here, trying to reinforce this knight. And now Magnus plays g4 after an 8-second think, and here I play knight b3. Now here I should have played knight 6 once again, but as you can tell, when you're playing with no added time, when you're sub 30 seconds, a lot of it is about the tempo. If you can master the tempo, usually good things are going to happen. So I play knight b3, trying to hit the rook and the pawn. Magnus goes rook d1, and now I play the move a5. Now the great thing about this position here for me is that even if you look at the evaluation bar and you see that white is winning, I have a very obvious idea. I want to start pushing my p on the queen side, and white, even though you have this pawn here, it's not going anywhere right away. So here white is the one that has to come up with a plan, has to use time, whereas I'm just moving in 1 second every time, meaning that the chances of me winning this game if we get into a scramble are very high. So we get the move h4. Now I play the move b4. Magnus goes a4. If he were to take the pawn on b4 here, of course I would play the move a4 because I just want to push my p up the board and try to win the game. So we get the move a4. Now I play the move knight b to d2. This is a mistake, but actually I'm very proud of this move from a general perspective of playing a game with no added time, because the computer likes knight to b2 here, trying to win this pawn. But to me as a human, I thought, why do I want to bring the knight over here? Like, I'm winning the pawns, but it just feels like you're away from the action. There's going to be rook f7, some kind of checkmate. The pawns are coming up the board. There's bishop f4 to hit the king. It just doesn't feel right. So I play the move knight d2, and the reason I think this move is a great move is very specifically because of the time control for this game. Now, in a normal game, this would be what Garry Kasparov would call a crummy move. This would be a bad move. You're giving up a piece and you're throwing away any chance of surviving. But when there's no added time here in the situation, what I'm doing is I'm forcing Magnus to come up with an idea. And as we're going to see, he's not able to do it in an efficient manner without spending too much time. So Magnus takes the knight. I take the pawn here. He goes bishop g5. And now I play the move rook g8. Magnus goes knight e5, and now I take the pawn. The problem here for Magnus is his time is getting low here. He can't easily push the pawn because I'll sack the rook for the 2 pieces. He can't really move the bishop away because then I'm going to take the pawn on g4. So suddenly this whole king side with these 2 pawns and this bishop, everything is stuck here. My rooks are perfectly placed, and I'm threatening to push my p, which is why, of course, as everyone is familiar, there's this meme called panic. And Magnus does panic here. He plays knight e5 check. He hangs the pawn. Now he goes king h2. And here I play the move b3, pushing my p. Magnus plays the move rook b1. And now I take. And here I go for the move king c5. And all of a sudden, as you can tell, the game has turned around completely. I have this passed pawn supported by the bishop. White's kingside pawns cannot advance due to the double stack. I'm threatening to bring my king and eat the juicer. And of course, we're headed towards a pure time scramble, which should favor me. So we get the move king g3. Here I play king b4. Magnus plays rook c1. What I realized as soon as I played king b4 is that I should have sacked the rook and then played king b4, trying to win this pawn, run the king up, use this pawn, and win the game. But I go king b4. Magnus plays rook c1, and now I decide to take the pawn on a4. Magnus plays rook a1. I go back. He plays rook b1. And here I correctly sack the rook with rook takes bishop, and after takes, and rook takes pawn here. As you'll notice, I'm pushing my p. I have 2 connected pawns. Probably a4 would have been cleaner here just to get the pawns up the board even quicker with the bishop supporting this one. But I take the pawn on g5. Magnus goes king f4. I go back, and as you can tell, everything has gone wrong for Magnus. Not only has he thrown away a winning position on the board, he is now also in the process of getting flagged on time as well. So he goes g5, a4, king g4. Of course, I play a3, just pushing this p up the board. Magnus plays rook c3. I go king b4, rook d3, and now I play the move a2. Magnus checks. I go king c3. Both of D's rooks are now under attack. Magnus plays rook d1, and here I play the move bishop to c4. Now, there are many ways to win here. Even b2 actually is not winning, right? b2, there's a draw here. This is actually very cute. White can check and just keep checking forever. If I try to hide the king, there's always going to be a check. And when I try to go this way, there's always a check. So no matter where the king goes here, White actually is able to force a draw with D's rooks. But I see the idea. I've played Magnus enough times to know that he's full of tricks in his bag. And I play the move bishop c4, cutting off this idea. And now with no rook check and the ability to push the 2p up the board, the game is over. Magnus plays rook d3. I take the rook, and here Magnus decides to resign with 1 second left on the clock. He's obviously lost on both the board, and he's also running out of time. So this was a very, very creative, tricky game that was played by both of us. If this were a game that were played in 5-minute blitz with no added time, I think Magnus wins this game. If this is a game played with increment, I think that Magnus wins this game. But because we were playing the 1 time control with 3 minutes and no added time on the clock, I was able to keep the game going just long enough, create just enough counterplay, and avoid losing immediately, that ultimately my defensive abilities combined with the fact that I was able to get Magnus really low on time paid huge dividends, and I ended up winning this game. Now, with this win, it would push me to a score of 7.5 points out of 8. Unfortunately, the end of the tournament wouldn't go my way. I would tie for first place by scoring 9 points out of 11, but ultimately I would get second on tiebreak behind Denis Lazovic, who got the dub. So I get second place in this early 3-0 Thursday, but I thought this game was really hype. It was a very wild back and forth affair. Definitely something you're going to see in Blitz when there's no added time, which is one of the reasons a lot of tournaments, it feels like, are moving towards no increment, at least online. And it makes for great games like this where everything can happen in a short span of time. So on that note, I hope you guys have enjoyed this recap of my game against the 5-time world champion Magnus Carlsen from the early edition of the 3-0 Thursday, today, November 27th, as we celebrate Thanksgiving here in America. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, make sure that you smash that subscribe button below, and we'll be back with more great content in the very near future. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and have a great rest of your day, and enjoy your Thanksgiving. See you guys. Bye.